folks here and climate activists from next door neighbors and lots of Georgian bluffers, which is fantastic, and some new Georgian bluffers, which is even more fantastic. So we have about an hour and a half, an hour and 3/4 tonight, and then some socializing after that, hopefully. So we're going to start off with John Anderson, who is the local science guy, which is so awesome. John here. It's amazing that we have John in our community. It is totally an unbelievable gift that he chose to come here when he left Newfoundland after being there for 30 years and associate professor of marine science. So he's such a gem and such a knowledgeable human and such a wonderful data nerd. And he's been collecting data for he's been collecting it for many years, but about 140 years of time in this area, right? I mean, a long period of time. Yeah, so he's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. He's always available. He consults with all kinds of different organizations when they want to know something about what's happening with our weather, with our climate, how we see the differences. And he's super available. So if anybody has questions or thoughts or queries, he's super available. We're going to have some Q&A today, but also he wants to let you know that come up and talk to him, email him, call him, because he's the guy that knows a lot about what's going on, and he's happy to talk about it because he likes to tell stories, and he makes stories out of data, which is like a complete gift. As some of us have, but you've gone beyond the nerd into being able to do some narrative around it that actually fascinates people. So over to you, and just to let you know, we are recording the session, video recording the session today, because we thought it's really important to have this as a resource. Most of the time you're going to be up here, and he has this fantastic, we brought this thing here that actually follows the person that's talking, which sort of blows my mind.
So if John plays the piano, it'll zoom over.
No questions. The camera will.
Yeah, if you don't want to be on camera, that might go to maybe go on a website or two out to the public. Just be aware that it is being filmed. So if you want to, I don't know, is there anybody here that's concerned about that?
You can.
If you asked a question.
You can just tap me on the shoulder and let me know, and I'll write your name down.
If you're going to ask a question, know that it will come over to you. So that's one thing to know. So I think John's going to share his knowledge for half an hour. So we'll have some questions and answers, and then you can hear some updates about a lot of the amazing things that are going on in this neck of the woods, which is bubbling with activity and all kinds of good stuff. So over to you, John.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey.
Thanks, Roger. I see the screen better. Well, thanks for coming out. It's a good turnout. I haven't talked much in recent years, but this kind of came out of this has come out of this project that some of our team is doing with the Grey Roots Museum on wild weather. So this exhibit's coming next May, and it'll be May to September, and it's coming from Science North, originally developed by the Ontario Science Centre. This is a sort of a simple version, and our role in this is to bring local climate stories as part of this museum exhibit. And so as we've been meeting and as we've been talking, I've been trying to the team explain like where I'm coming from and some of these concepts that lie behind why our weather's getting wilder and wilder all the time. And so then Anne asked if I would come and talk to this group. And so you're kind of a trial balloon because I put together a pretty academic talk. I didn't tell my wife because she'd be upset with me, but I think this is just where I'm coming from, and hopefully, some of this will stick as we go through this. And the theme that I kept talking to the team about was one of acceleration. But a scientist I've followed since 2008, when he first published the very first scientific paper that I had read on tipping points, Tim Lenton, he came up with a book this year the first time. So I've been reading this book, and I got all turned on about the positive tipping points. There are negative tipping points, but there's positive tipping points. And so I'm going to go through some of the negative ones and then some positive ones. And a lot of this, quite a bit of this material, I used to teach at the college to post-secondary students in an environmental class. And this is the kind of the simple example I used of a tipping point. So the tree is a really good example. It's a complex dynamic system. The trees live decades to centuries, and they have to adapt. And they do through their lifetime. And if you go through multiple generations of trees, of course, they can move. They can go north, they can go south. And so it's a complex dynamic system. And the example I gave them is, say that a beaver came out and wanted to chop this tree down and started gnawing on this tree. It would gnaw and gnaw and gnaw and go around the tree, but nothing would happen. The tree would still be standing. You consider this in a stable state. But eventually that beaver would take one final chomp, or a gust of wind would come along when it was near its end, and boom, down the tree would go, and it would enter a new stable state. And many of these tipping points are not reversible. Some are, but many aren't. And this is not reversible. That tree is not going to stand up again and start growing. And so that's a simple example of a tipping point. And now, Marilyn, this is where I was thinking of you, because this is often the way systems people. So this science of complex dynamic systems, which was part of my PhD, so I've been in this for a long time. Earth's here in basin A. This is considered a stable state. Forces can push it this way and this way, but it always tends to come back. What happens, there's two things that happen when this system tips and ends up in basin B. One is a really big forcing system comes along, and the other is that things change so it lowers the threshold. It makes it easier to get over. And then it ends up in basin B. Now it's in a new stable state that will rock around. This could go back. Like a good example that scientists use is the interglacial periods that are about 100,000 years in periodicity and have been going on for at least 2.5 million years. And our species, Homo, has existed through 2 or 3 of these cycles in terms of adapting, although those are very different worlds, an ice world to a water world, basically. So here's Tim Lenton, one of my climate heroes. And his first paper, published in 2008, they had identified, he and his team, 9 tipping points. They're now up to, it's in around 20 right now. And that's what this map is representing. And 2 years ago, 2023, he and his team, this is an international group of people, started publishing the annual Tipping Points report. And because they've been looking at these and studying, and they're trying to figure out, are they going to tip, or when's something going to tip, or if it does tip, can they identify it? And the most recent report, which was 2025, had some bad news, because the first system is tipped. And I should just point out, like, there's different colors if you can see them, but the blue are things that are melting, so that's ice. The red are circulation, and they include both ocean and land circulations, like atmospheric circulations. And the final is a biome loss. And so the first one to tip are tropical coral reefs. That's now, in the estimation of these scientists, has officially tipped. That's a bad one. That's a bad tipping point. Coral reefs are kind of like the Amazon forest. They're very nutrient poor, but they're very biodiversity rich because they recycle so much of what's within the system. And there's literally millions of people that depend directly on coral reefs for their, well, not just their livelihood, but their lives. And that one is now tipped. And it's not going back. There's 4 more that they've identified now that they think is really close. And sort of sometimes it's like, I sometimes think of an earthquake. Like, you know when it's coming, but you don't know actually it's hit till after it's over. But this one is close. The Amazon rainforest is close. The West Antarctic ice sheet, some scientists absolutely think that it is tipped, but this team that produced the report haven't gone that far yet. So we've got 2 biome losses and a melting one. The next one is the Greenland ice sheet. It's a big dome that sits all over this rock of Greenland, but the west side of that sheet, they believe, is already tipped, where the Jacobson glacier is that carves up all the icebergs. And I think there's one more. Yeah, the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturn Circulation. So this is this important ocean current that takes heat from the tropics up past Newfoundland and over and warms Europe, and then becomes part of this large circulation where the return, as the water gets colder and denser, it sinks and goes back down, actually to the Southern Atlantic. And so if this thing shuts down, or even if it seriously weakens beyond where it is, the climate in Europe will be very cold, very different. And so these are the 5 that have been highlighted in this most recent report. And we believe all these are really negative tipping points. So I'm going to talk about acceleration. So this is the next kind of topic. This is my introduction. And I always taught this to the students. Now I would start with my dad. When I was a young father, gave me this book published in the late 80s by David Chilton called The Wealthy Barber. Has anyone read The Wealthy Barber? And it was about this, fictional barber that he paid himself first. And it's the power of compound growth. And that's the exponential equation. And at first not much happens, but if you keep compounding that, and you keep growing at that same rate, even if it's a constant, kaboom, and that barber retired with a really nice retirement plan. And that's the exponential growth. And that's part of acceleration. Now I'm going to give you some examples of how we're accelerating. Yeah, so this one, it's my cartoon. My brother was, he drew cartoons for the Master newspaper, and the rat pig was one of his favorite creatures, but it kind of captures like the world we've been living in. It's one of fossil fuels, we're burning it, we're racing ahead, and our world's melting. So there was this international geosphere biosphere program that started back in the 1980s. By 2004, they had produced a report. This came out of the Global Millennium Project. And these scientists, international group of scientists, were charged with trying to come up with what's the state of planet Earth. Pretty big task. And this is what they came up with. And then this study was updated by the chief scientist, Will Steffen, from the Resilience Center, Stockholm University, in 2015. And so the update was in 2015. And it's many trends analyzed from 1750 onwards. There was a synchronous acceleration. These are exponential from the 1950s onwards, so after the Second World War. And those trends are continuing. Most are exponential. And a lot of scientists have said this marks the beginning of the Anthropocene. This marks the beginning of humans' impact on planet Earth, where we become a greater geological force than the natural forces of geology themselves. There's Will. He's dead. He died tragically young, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. But there's 24 indicators here, and this is in the framework of sustainability. So the 3 stools of sustainability: social, economic, and environmental. And 12 of these are socioeconomic trends, and they're the things like world population growth, real GDP, which means it's adjusted for inflation, and so on. And then over here are the Earth systems. So these are Earth systems, and the first 4 are all, first 4 or 5, whatever, are all greenhouse gases. So those are systems that we've pushed to accelerate with the burning of fossil fuels and land use change. Those are the 2 big drivers of our climate change. And so this is called the Great Acceleration, and this is actually, generically what they call it. And this is part of where we're living and what we're living. That study hasn't been updated in 10 years, but I'm sure if and when it is, we'll just see more of the same. But the thing about exponential growth, if you do that high school experiment, you got a petri dish full of nutrients and you put in a couple of bacteria, they start to grow and they grow exponentially. But you cannot keep growing exponentially forever in a closed system. And scientists consider planet Earth a closed system. And so when those nutrients are all used up, kaboom, there's a collapse. And so this is something that concerns scientists, is that we know we can't keep growing like this. We know we can't keep impacting Earth system processes like this with this exponential increase. It's going to come to an end at some point. And in the concepts of complex dynamic system theory, there's a 4-stage cycle. And the way this works properly is we start pulling back on this and we'll reach a new stable state in a mature system without crashing, before we crash. And that would be living sustainably, living within the safe boundaries of planet Earth. So that takes me now to this next topic, which is tightly linked to the previous one, which is the 9 planetary boundaries. And this is Johan Rockström, formerly of the Resilience Center in University of Stockholm. He's now at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Studies in Germany. He was the chief architect of this. He continues to do this work. And this is the safe operating space for humanity. So this diagram is just, it's kind of the one they used to use. They don't use this now anymore, but inside that, if we stay inside that green circle, we're in the safe operating space for humanity. And we should be able to go indefinitely, renewing our resources. We get beyond that, we get in trouble. So this is how they originally expressed it, was we move beyond this into an area of caution. It's like red light, yellow light, green light, yellow light, red light. You keep pushing the system, you move out into the one that's going to cause systems to collapse. And that can be thought of as a tipping point. So here are the 9 Earth system processes that have gone into this analysis. And the important thing to take from this is that these are all linked together. And so if one starts to go wacko, it will affect other ones. And there could be what they expect a cascading effect. And so these are the 9. I don't think we go into it, not time for that. But this is what I wanted to show you. So the first study came out in 2009, updated 6 years later in 2015, 2023, then 2025, just this year. Back here, they could only assess 7 out of the 9 Earth system processes, but we've crossed 3 boundaries. Now, still 7, but we've crossed 4, 3 to 4, then 6, then 7. Now, if you take that data, as I did, and plot boundaries crossed versus the years, guess what you get? An exponential growth. This is increasing exponentially. Now, this is a simple model, 4 data points, but it's got a high statistical sense of reliability. It's in the 99% range. So extend that model forward, all 9 will be crossed within 10 years, 2035. That's what that model says. This is all part of the acceleration, another way of expressing it. And then I think this is the last one. I always like to show this because it's us here in Canada. And this is the Insurance Bureau of Canada. And this is their annual facts report. And up till 2023, they would publish these data every year, going back to 1983. And what these are payouts by insurance companies in Canada due to catastrophic weather events that have impacted built infrastructure, and they've had to pay out money. So it doesn't represent the total losses, it just represents what the insurance industry has had to pay out. And I think you can guess, because I've already said it in that panel, it's growing exponentially. And again, it's a high statistical fit to these data over 40 years now. And as I say in the panel, these costs are doubling every 8 years. That's 10% growth rate. Now, if you were in business and your business was growing 10% each year, you'd be pretty happy. If you're the insurance company, they're not this happy. This is not a sustainable business model. And maybe you've heard bits and rumors about this, but our insurance premiums are going up. Tash and I were talking about this. But other things, like you can't get insurance now if you're in what's considered a floodplain, unless you make very serious changes to that or adaptations. In some cases, you won't get it at all. And this is what I was thinking of Larry Feltmate, or Blair Feltmate, is he's been pushing the governments to update floodplain maps, but they won't do it because people's housing prices are really good. And the real estate industry is really upset about that. And so all these dynamics that are going on. Okay, we're going to go to positive tipping points. Now, scientists say there are at least five different positive tipping points. And one of them is energy systems that our society runs on. And this really comes down to Wright's law. And this guy, Theodore Wright, he co-owned this company back in the 30s, between the two wars, that designed and manufactured airplanes. And what he observed is that every time they doubled the production of one of their lines of aircraft, and they had quite a few, costs dropped 20%. And many people know this as the technological learning curve, but it's actually a little bit more than that. So as you learn more by making more planes, you get better at that technology, and your costs come down. As your costs come down, you start to scale up your production. So you get the benefit of Henry Ford's assembly line in terms of efficiency of larger production. And the final one is as you keep going, there are new technological innovations that get built into this. And then so those three drive that. And what I want you to notice is that this, I just threw some numbers in and made it go down 20%. This is a typical curve, and then this runs out. And eventually, there's no further gain. As these technologies and this whole production becomes mature, the production cost will flatten. And that's Wright's law. And that's what's behind this energy revolution. Now, I've been following this for some time. I don't know if you've seen this, Robert, yet, but this Ember Energy, it's an international not-for-profit organization that works on energy, just released this report in September 2025, and it's making a lot of waves in the things that I read. And so I'm just going to share you some of the good news stories for this, because there's an energy revolution underway, and this is considered an important social tipping point. This is going to change people's behaviors. This is going to change the way we live. This is going to change the way we design and use our cities and things like that. So it's a rapid transformation. So the definition, this is a new word. I think it's a new word, electrotech. They say the rapid transformation of the global energy system towards electricity-centric technologies. And here it is. I just grabbed this quote from the front part of the torch. Humanity is graduating from burning fossil commodities to harnessing manufactured technologies, from hunting scarce fossil fuels to farming the inexhaustible sun. This is an energy revolution. It's a pretty big, bold statement, but they back it up. So here I'm just going to share you the age of the electrotech revolutions. And the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are based on Carlota Perez's work. She's a really famous economist. But she's in the line of like Joseph Shupton. I mean, you can go back to someone called Alexander Kondratieva, Russian. And what this shows, and I put the dates along the bottom, is every 40 to 60 years, there's a new technological revolution that fundamentally changes society. And it's not ever just one thing. And this is all based on her work. I don't think you can read that there, but like this one in the Age of Steel is electricity. So that's the first time we see electricity coming along. Steel, and then heavy engineering. So those are the three key things that were driving that revolution. And now here, can't see it very well, but this is Embers, saying we've now entered the electrotechnical age, and they say it's renewable energy, electrification, and AI. That's the three things they're saying. But I added one more, because I read quite a lot of reading economics, is robotics. And I was surprised they didn't have that there, because many economists put AI and robotics together as an important driver of this revolution. And so this revolution has actually begun now. And I think they pinned to 2025 to coincide with this report. So now I'll just give you some examples. So this is Wright's law. And this is solar and PV modules, the price and how they've dropped. Can you read that? It starts in 1980. All these end in 2020. So all these are like after the 5 years. 99.6% for the solar modules. Wind installation costs have dropped 80% since 1984. Battery cell prices have dropped 99% since 1980. And the important thing to look at here is these haven't flattened out. They still got a ways to go before they ban them. And so this gets people really excited. These are just the drop of cost to 2020, and this process is continuing. And so that's room to be bold in your statement that we've entered a new age of revolution. And here's the electrotech just keeps getting better. Solar cell efficiency is going up from 5% to over 25%. I remember reading years ago scientists saying the highest efficiency we could ever get from a solar panel was 21%. We're already over 25. And that's all part of this technological learning. Top tier battery cell capacity went from 100 watts per kilogram over to over 300. And heat pump coefficient of performance, what they say is a measure of efficient and powerful heating system, it doubled from 1.5 to 3. And so these are these technological things that are driving this revolution and bringing this price down. And I had to talk about the EV revolution, because it gets us pretty excited. It's the new EV drivers. Again, this is all in the Ember report. You get it online. I got into this by this lady I follow from Oxford University, and this is just from their slide deck. But the report's out there in Ember. 2- and 3-wheeler electric vehicles, well, you can see they're all going up exponentially. Car EVs, truck and vans, and public charging points. They're all going up exponentially. And we know from these falling costs that this is going to continue for some time to come. It'll flatten out as an exponential function is supposed to in the S-shaped curve. And here is just EV deployment in China, North America, Europe, and the rest of the world. You can see China's leading at 35 million now. North America and Europe is just over 20, and I dare say that's mostly Europe as opposed to North America, but they're combined together. And then the rest of the world, not even 4 million. But all those trends are the same. They're all accelerating. They're all going up. So this is cause for optimism. We are living on the cusp of this change. You can tell your grandkids, or tell your children to your grandkids or your great-grandkids, that you were here when this revolution started. And I'm pretty excited about this. I've been following this for years, but this Ember report really nailed it for me. And that's something I just wanted to share today. And this is the last slide. Just again from their slide deck in the report that the electric tech costs have fallen fast. The growth has been exponential, and the ceiling of the possible is high above us. All those things I was talking to you about the way Wright's law works and the way exponential growth works. And so that's in this. That's it. Here comes the sun. I was just at a Beatles thing last week in Bitford, and Bill McKibben, who is another leading climate activist, just published his book called Here Comes the Sun. It made me think of the Beatles.
Let's do it.
That's
Here
all right,
comes
they
the
say.
sun. Do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun. I say, it's better. It'll be better, right?
It's all right.
So I'm sure people have questions, but I have one just to start with. So we look at the Stockholm ones with the planetary boundaries where we're getting to the edges of the boundaries. And then we look at the acceleration of the EV in the revolution. So those boundaries can shift back into the safe zone.
That's the idea, yeah.
That's the idea. Because it's really important to think that way, that if you're looking at the acceleration of the good in terms of solar and EV and electrifying, that you actually can impact getting to the danger zone.
Yeah.
Right? Because so they act against
that's
each
so
other.
true.
Okay.
And when you think of like we often talk about the first and second industrial revolution. That's like common terminology you get in the classroom, like driven by the steam engine and coal, and then driven by gas and internal combustion engines. They have completely transformed the way we live. One author I read said, this is Homer Dixon, a Canadian scientist, we live now like if we were in Rome, we had 20 slaves dealing with this. Bill McKibben's book has taken that up to 40 slaves. Because, and again, this is something I showed the students in the class. I show how population has increased, emissions have increased, but emissions per capita have been increasing at a faster rate. And a lot of that's countries like ours that we're using. We're not just using the amount of energy our parents use, but we're using more, and our kids are using more than we are. It's another one of these acceleration things. So we get that under control, and there's good economic models for this. And I know Lee knows about the donut economics, Kate Raworth at Oxford, and I subscribe to her and get her newsletters and updates. And there are a lot of places around the world adopting this. Most of them are at sort of the city level, but they're adopting this, which is living within a safe space and doing it economically. And so we know this can work, and this electric revolution is going to make it easier. That's good.
Do people have questions? Anybody have a question for John? Brian, and then
I just wondered what you think about the big piece of the electro tech revolution is based on storing electricity. And that's one of the things that has not actually progressed that far. We keep talking about critical minerals and all this sort of thing, but you know, those critical minerals are being used in a type of battery that was present in those little amphora clay things that they dig out from Roman boats on the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. Those things stored electricity the same way our current batteries do.
Let me just give you an example, Brian. Just let me give you an example. So engineers talk about battery density, and the lithium ion has been so successful because it has so much energy per unit density. But there's a new technology that's emerged now, and it's starting to go into place, and it's sodium lithium. And we have a lot of sodium. And these do not have anywhere near the density of the lithium ion, but they're perfect for on-site storage.
The flow battery.
Well, it's Roger maybe knows. I just know that I've just been reading about these sodium ion batteries, not sodium lithium, sodium ion batteries. And so you think of that you can now store massive amounts of energy on site. They're not mobile, they're not going with you. Now think of how you're going to build transportation in your city. You're not going to have a million little cars running around with lithium ion batteries. You're going to have public transit running off these massive sodium ion batteries that are placed in the ground somewhere near the city. So this is all part of this revolution. So whatever you read yesterday is outdated. Seriously.
In response to Brian's question, would you say that we're on a good trajectory for creating better battery storage? Because that's you're saying it's not really, doesn't seem as though it's getting much better very quickly. Are we on a good path with that? And maybe Roger or maybe others have something to say about it.
Costs are coming down because things like energy density are going up.
So that's a good thing.
So you get higher and higher performance for less and less cost. So there are big improvements in solar cells.
As long as we don't end up fighting a third world war over digging the minerals that we need.
Brian,
I'm waiting.
I've also read, just to answer your question, I've also read that there's a new market that has now emerged for after vehicle batteries, which is in home solar heating systems, and that particularly small businesses are using these. So now when your car battery needs replaced, it goes to a second life. And then I've been reading as well. I follow this guy, David Roberts, who used to write for Vox. He now is called Dr. Bolts. He's on Substract. Recycling of these batteries. So when they're finally done at your home or your small business, those batteries get recycled. And so this is all part of the regenerative economy. This is all part of living within the donut, is that you recycle those. So they're minerals, right? As though if you get them back, you can still use them.
In the back row, I think you had a question.
Oh, yeah. My name is Frank. I'm just wondering how you reconcile the capitalist ethic of growth, which is considered 7%. Adam Smith came up with that concept of capitalism. So you reinvest, and like you say, your production, your earnings go up as you reinvest into your own business. But how do you stay in that planetary matrix of sustainability when you couple that with population growth?
I think like the simplest answer I can give you is that you make polluters pay. And you have all sorts of plastic pollution. These companies produce it without limit, but it's not their responsibility to get rid of it. You start making them responsible for getting rid of it. You burn fossil fuels and you're polluting our atmosphere, and you're doing it for free. You make them pay. And when those costs are, the economists, they say they're all externalized costs. Well, that shouldn't be. They should be internalized. Now when you do it, that market system should work because you're paying the true cost of what you're doing. And that money is going back into society. That's the simplest answer I can give. I know this is a huge question. One of the things, my daughter's a climate scientist at Brock, and one of the things that she's really big on is this whole degrowth shoot. which is different yet again, but they all come back to being efficient and reusing and using less energy. We can't keep working like we've got 20 or 40 slaves because we're getting the energy from the sun, as the Romans did. This guy, Homer Dixon, did a whole analysis with his assistant. He said he wished he'd never started it. He was at Toronto. He was at the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo. Based on barley, the amount of barley they could do, because then it went into oxen and then transport. And this led to the downfall of the Roman Empire because they never got better and more efficient, especially as that empire expanded and as they degraded their lands. And it's an academic study. That's the best I can answer.
So consuming less and making those who are creating all of the things for us to consume pay for the cost of what happens with it next.
That's a good starting point. Absolutely.
Pam.
I'm just wondering where our provincial and federal government standpoints are with respect to climate change.
Big one.
Oh, just call Mark and give him. He'll tell you it's important.
I'm going to experience a lot of controversy and holdbacks from the governments with what we're looking at.
Are you talking about the provincial government, all the government, federal government, any government?
Take your pick.
Take your pick. Who wants to go for that one?
I'll just say in this report by Ember, they kind of address this because they talk about, and this is based pretty much on Perez's work, but also Joseph Schumpeter, who's a famous American economist, that there's always bumps in the road. There's always setbacks. But when you got a driver like this, it's going to happen. So it's not a straight path. We're in a tough situation right now where we're going backwards. So, to be positive, you've got to sort of hope and believe in this process, that this revolution will get us past this, and that revolution isn't just electrifying everything. It is seriously is not using so much energy. We don't have to use this much energy.
So do our various levels of government get the electrification revolution? They know it, but they know it. But
Well,
it's not-
take this recent example. We were talking about this today in the GBCAN meeting, where we've been working with the township when Rogers developed this incredible tool plant. And we just had 2 light-duty pickup trucks. They're up for replacement. And we just got told last week they're going to buy internal combustion engines, even though Rogers' information will tell them that's not the best decision. And I asked the CAO, I said, when you make a decision to buy a new capital item, like a truck, do you count in the total cost of ownership? And he said, no, we just look at the price. And I shared with the group today, I didn't know that at the time, but I now know there's actually a law in Ontario saying that you're supposed to have an asset management plan where you do that. So that's what you're up against, a culture of change, a culture of changing the way people are thinking.
But have they bought those trucks yet, or are they just planning?
Oh, I don't know.
Is there a little?
Just an example
No, but it's a
that we have to change. It's not a straight path forward. It's not. You can't just talk about. It's way more cost effective. You have to actually talk about a legal aspect to it. Tasha could probably take this for us. And also, and I think Roger can speak to this much more than I can. But I think what he's found in his work and working with other municipalities are farther ahead on this. When you have a workshop and you explain this to people and they get it, it's like a social tipping point. It comes from I'm not driving a wimpy EV to this is the only thing we should be doing. And I've heard from any number of EV owners, they can't believe how much they like it. My daughter and her husband bought a used EV and they just gush about it. So I think there's a lot of things at play, and you can't always just be rational. Sometimes you just gotta be.
There's a little uphill roll that we have to go on, and stay going forward, and keep pushing it. Yeah, forward, and then Jim.
A good example of what you're talking about, I think, is the pump storage in Weaver. And it's so obvious a good solution, and yet there's so many people objecting to it for what seems to be such trivial reasons.
Comments on
It just
that
shows
one?
you how hard it is to go forward.
Well, I was asked about this, and so I started. This is like 2 or 3 years ago, a couple of years ago, and I found out that the Narwhal had done a couple articles on that, and they found out there had been these 2 reports by the Ontario Energy Board to the Ford government that hadn't been released, and that they both said that the pump storage was not cost effective. So I contacted the Clean Air Alliance, which is now Climate Action Alliance. Is that someone? The name's just changed. Angela Biscoff. Again, I subscribe to them. And said, yeah, they have filed a freedom of information request because they want those reports. The government won't release them. So if they released a report, 2 reports, because Doug didn't like the first one, so we sent them back, and they came back with the same answer. And you want to be cost effective. How is Dougie going to defend cost effectiveness if he's got the Ontario Energy Board saying there are more cost effective solutions?
Storage solutions.
Basically, yeah, basically battery storage. And you can still use your nuclear power to put them into batteries, but you don't need to take a giant hole. I haven't read the reports, and I haven't heard. It's probably 2 years since I contacted her, and they're just
It's definitely equivocal. Jim and then Marilyn.
So, I like the positive tipping point curves, but what about those 4 that are negative that have already tipped? Like, what do we do about that ocean circulation? And if the Amazon rainforest tips and is gone, it's not coming back anytime soon, right? So, what do we do about that except, I guess, the best we can, which is to produce less greenhouse gases and things.
Well, scientists say every 0.1 of a degree matters because it's already bad, and like we're already seeing it. It's actually 1.6 now in global warming, not the 1.5. That the impacts are way worse than the models predicted. And in Tim Lenton's book, he talks about this. Because the models are always incomplete, they're always set of guesses. And a lot of this has to do with non-linearities. And the scientists say, so the first thing is every 0.1 of a degree will make the future better. But if we keep going like this, civilization will not survive this. Humans probably will, some humans, but civilization will not survive these breakdown in Earth system processes. Now, that's not good news, and I don't say that. I don't say that unless I'm asked, because it's really upsetting, and this is why a lot of climate scientists deal with a lot of anxiety.
But you did say that the planetary boundaries that have gone into the red, can come back with certain interventions and the electrification and revolution.
I
but
believe
not
some of them
not
can.
these ones that have gone over the tipping point. Is that
Well, if you
right?
think of, I said
The Amazon is an
before,
example.
like a lot of tipping points are not reversible, but some are.
Right.
And so I believe we could reverse the Amazon rainforest.
So that's exactly.
But I don't believe we can reverse corals because it's not just warmer oceans, which has caused the bleaching that you read about. It's the acidification that's come from the carbon dioxide that's in the oceans by carbonate acid that's dissolving the calcareous shells. And so that one to come back would take millennia. It's just what the scientists, it's what they say.
So some of them can't come back. Marilyn.
Well, I was thinking, I read Perez in the past as well, and one of the things I liked about being able to see those technological times across the timeline is that she also talks about the social unrest that follows. And so this technological change happens, and then there's a huge period of social and political adjustment. And if you look at the timing of World War I and World War II, they fit quite neatly into her timeline. And so when I look at questions like capitalism, what's going to happen with capitalism, or what's happening in the United States, I wonder if we are already in that period of social adjustment, and that sometimes governments that go towards are not going to respond. They're going to be the slow adopters, not the quick adopters. But it's just interesting then what's the goal of citizens groups like this at times where we know we're in a shift period and we know that there's going to be civil unrest because people are going to be hurt.
But again, the people that are reading Falk say it's going to start right here in our community. It's going to start there. So there's no tab over time. And I think that's what brings us together is that, we're building community as best we can in our limited period of time on planet Earth. And that's why I'm so passionate about trying to do what we're doing with municipal councils and staff and people. And it's tough. It's like one step forward, 2 or 3 back.
But seeing the
The
connections.
community is where it will go, and this is based on, I think, history that you start in your community. You're not going to do this by yourself, and so then you start building partnerships and connections. That's what they say. I like it. I bought in.
I think what Marilyn, you're saying is really important, that we all have to be prepared to keep our heads above the unrest and through the unrest and see beyond that. But be willing to live in it and not to lose hope.
In the sense that it is predictable and
It's a cycle, right?
It's modeled, right?
Yeah.
We know it's coming. So I find that encouraging in a way. What kind of resistant or proactive work can we do? And if our government's not going to do it, it's going to be hard.
It's our job. Bob.
Yeah, just a comment. Here we are in a little church in Campbell. You're preaching to the converted.
Absolutely. I wouldn't give this talk to most audiences.
You were right out of town.
Through the door.
When you think of the politicians at the municipal level, the provincial level, the federal level, they're all representing the public, and they want to get back in their office in 4 years' time. And it's up to us to help to change the public opinion of that, and work with our own families and our own friends and everybody else to kind of get them on board to say that there really is a kind of emergency going on, and we may have to adjust our behavior and make sure that we survive. And it's a big deal. Most people will just blow you off with it. It's important to keep that messaging going, keep it positive, but it's a serious situation. I worry about it all the time. And these politicians, I don't blame them. I'm Carney's, building a pipeline now. Well, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. I don't like it, but it does not surprise me.
You can see that coming. I helped Michael Tonton when he was campaigning for political office. I got some pushback from some people. One of the first things he asked me is, well, what do you feel about the government buying this pipeline? I said, well, I get it. It's a political decision. And I said, I think it's the right one. Maybe you'll never build it. You've just committed to it. Or if you build it, maybe you'll never use it. And if you use it, well, at least you've done a lot of other good things. That was kind of my approach with Michael. So we went and tried to deal with the climate questions that he was getting as best he could.
So Pam and then Kathy.
Sorry, I don't like the term AI. Unfortunately, I think that AI is too rapidly taking over things where people's opinions are being overthrown in favor of the decision making of AI. And I have concerns about what level of control are humans going to turn over to AI when it's been proven in many cases not to be effective.
Or necessarily accurate. Yeah.
Well, you should be concerned.
Yeah.
And all the experts say you should be concerned. Sam Altman said you should be concerned. Every technology can go either way. Right? They talk about, one of the things I read, they talk about trains. They were really good. They started transporting people and moving goods. They also became really critical, especially in the U.S. Civil War, for moving troops and facilitating war. So but it's a serious concern. Absolutely.
So how do we, as a group, or as people who are concerned about things, how do we work with them?
Well, as an individual, I pretty much stopped using social media. And as a citizen, I encourage my government to bring in proper regulations. something that our governments are supposed to be doing, is to regulate this as a safe space for our citizens. I don't think we're doing a good job. So again, it's just what the area says. We are the citizens, we're the people they're supposed to be governing for.
That's my biggest fear right now, is the control that's being given to AI.
Well, and pushing for evidence base behind the AI is a pretty critical piece as well, right? Because there's an awful lot of non-accurate material that's going out there, and that's the scary part. Kathy.
I just wanted to pick up on comments around community and the importance of working together and networking. And I agree, like I think we are in some kind of like edge of a social tipping point. And the hardest thing I think for people like us is that we like to sit with people like us. And I speak on behalf of myself as well. Like being in relationship with people with whom I have the least in common is one of my least favorite things. And yet that's the only way to really move forward, realizing that we can't persuade people, but this is about relationship ultimately. It is about walking alongside people where they are right now today, trying to figure out what really matters to them, and then find a way to even plant a tiny little seed of doubt. If that's all we can do, hopefully somebody else will come along and water that seed of doubt, and maybe that will grow into something greater. But I think it's really, really vital that all of us, and I'm speaking to myself, it's like realize that we come together to be a community, to encourage one another, to learn together, to challenge one another. But ultimately, the work is out there with people with whom we have least in common.
So we agree, and I just have to jump in and say, one of the climate scientists that many of us follow is Catherine Hayhoe. She's Canadian, but she lives and works in the States. And
Have the conversation. Yeah.
she says the most important thing is, you know it, we all
The
know it.
conversation.
Talk about it. Like the single most important thing. Tom.
Tom.
I'd like to thank you very much for the update on all the progress that's being made. And I agree totally that you're preaching to the choir here. And I think most of us are, for the most part, on board, or we wouldn't be here. And the biggest problem I have when I'm talking with people who aren't like-minded is the great amount of misinformation that is out there. And there's so much misinformation, and the fossil fuel companies are feeding it with, they've got a lot of money, and they've got ads on TV, radio, and they're pushing Kearney, and they're pushing Alberta, and if we don't get our act together and tackle a lot of the misinformation that's out there, try to persuade people that fossil fuels are going to peak soon, and that we have to do something about it, or the climate's going to, it's already going out of hand. So that's our real problem, is tackling information that people have, that they've been given, that is erroneous.
So does that get back to having the conversations, and all of us having the conversations?
Well, let me just reply directly to Tom.
And the bus.
The reason I would come and talk about all this nerdy stuff to you is because you are the expert. And I'm wanting you to know what I know. But this recent event at the county, where there was a proposal to get out of the Gordon Green and Great Plan, this community responded, and they filled the chamber, and there were all sorts of letters. Last June, there was a delegation full of misinformation from these two citizens, one from Great Highlands, one from Georgian Bluffs, who were reading out of this Maggie Braun's climate denying paper. And we were in touch with the county about this, and we were prepared to go to the counter delegation, but it didn't go over well. And I think one of the reasons it didn't is that Danuta, through the network, we sent a letter to all the councillors saying, basically saying, you're watching. And I am now working with Linda towards a delegation that will be timed with the launch of the adaptation plan. The adaptation plan is scheduled for early in the new year. So that's, I think, how we grow out. We get together and we solve, any differences or answer questions we have. But then as we speak as one voice and we start speaking to these politicians, we start speaking to the community. So that's what we're doing. That's kind of the model that we're working with.
That's a really good segue into some of the other things that are going on. No, that's perfect. That's perfect because
So much for half an hour.
no, that's good. Well, you got us going on a lot of things. Thank you so much, John. That was one of the first things, just to as a kind of support for what you were saying, John, is that a few people turned into a lot of people, turned into a lot of letters, turned into a lot of people going to the Grey Council, and it had an impact. So we can do these things if we organize ourselves and we can do them. We can make an impact, and we've had some really good demonstrations of that. We've got about 7 little brief reports about some of these things we're doing to have the conversations, to pull people together, to engage some new audiences, all that stuff. Are you up for hearing about that and doing some little